I am Harlow Vance, 65 years old. There was a time when introducing myself felt like stepping into a room full of echoes. 13 years of silence can do that to a person? Stretch the air around your name until it feels too light, too thin, as if it might float away entirely. My daughter Mara walked out when she was 22, married a man whose family believed independence meant cutting ties clean. She followed their lead. Then she stopped calling. Then she stopped answering. Eventually, she stopped existing anywhere near my life. I rebuilt myself slowly. I kept the little bakery I had opened in my 40s, the one place that never abandoned me. Kneading dough became a kind of prayer, and the regular customers became the closest thing I had to a circle. But years wear on a body, and by 65, the early mornings and long shifts began carving aches into my bones that no amount of stretching could soothe. When a hospitality group from Seattle approached me with an offer, an amount so large I reread it 5 times, I felt something unfamiliar relief without guilt. I signed the papers. I walked out of the bakery for the last time, and I thought the next chapter of my life might finally be quiet in a gentler way. But then the local newspaper printed a feature about the sale. A cheerful little story about a beloved neighborhood bakery changing hands and a well-earned retirement for its longtime owner. My name was right there in bold type. That morning, I stared at the newspaper on my kitchen table far longer than necessary. Something in my chest tightened the way it used to when the phone rang in the early years after Mara left. The hope I forced myself to choke down. The fear right behind it. I folded the newspaper carefully and set it aside. I told myself it meant nothing, that no one who once chose silence was waiting for my name to rise to the surface again, but by the afternoon, all tied to old family contacts I hadn't blocked, but hadn't heard from in years. And by the following morning, the silence of 13 years began to shift. The first call came from my cousin Leah, someone I had not spoken to in nearly a decade. I almost let it ring into voicemail, but something in me twitched and I answered. Harlow, you saw the article. Her voice carried that nervous excitement people get when gossip is too big to hold. I saw it. I said, it is fine. Leah, well, one of the reporters shared it in a foodie group, and from there it spread like wildfire. People are sharing it like wildfire. I could hear keys tapping on her end, the frantic rhythm of forwarding and screenshotting. You know how family is, she added. News travels faster than you think. Family. That word always landed strangely in my chest. By the next morning, the story had hopped from Eastmoreland neighbors to a Facebook group in Vancouver, then somehow into the hands of a relative I barely remembered, June, the niece of my late ex-husband. She messaged Mara directly. I learned the details later, but I can imagine how it unfolded. Mara sitting in the cramped apartment she shared with her husband's mother, Bernice, the peeling paint on the walls, the cheap couch whose springs complained louder than their finances, Bernice in the kitchen arguing with a bill collector about overdue charges, and Mara scrolling through her phone, looking numb in that way only years of disappointment can carve into a young woman. Then the message appeared. Saw this. Pretty sure it's your mom. Didn't she used to run that bakery? Congrats to her, looks like she made a lot from the sale, followed by the link. I heard later that Mara did not even finish reading the article before standing up and calling out, Bernice, get your bags. We are going to Portland. Bernice shuffled into the room, still holding the phone she used to bargain with creditors. Why, she snapped. We cannot afford a trip. We are not paying for anything, Mara replied. My mother will. Those were the words that carried them straight to my doorstep. And they were already on their way before I even knew my name had found her again. They arrived before noon, just as I was settling in with a cup of tea I suddenly no longer wanted. When I opened the door, Mara stood there with a smile too bright and too fast. Mom, oh my God, look at you. She leaned in for a hug before I could process the sight of 2 overstuffed suitcases at her feet. Behind her, Bernice wiped her forehead with the back of her hand. These stairs are a nightmare. You never thought to install a ramp. Some of us have bad knees. Mara shot her a look. Bernice, please. We just got here. I know where I am. Bernice muttered, shifting her weight dramatically. Does not change that my joints are screaming. I kept my hand on the door. Steady. You two traveled together. Yes, Mara said quickly. We needed a break from everything. So we figured we would come stay for a while, just until things settle. Bernice snorted. A while, you mean until we can breathe again? Mara glanced at me, trying to soften the edges. Just temporary. Mom, a chance to reconnect. And your article, it made us so happy for you. I studied her face. 13 years had carved sharpness where softness once lived. But her eyes flicked to the suitcases again and again, betraying urgency. I stepped back and opened the door wider. Well, I said, letting a small smile lift the corners of my mouth. Come in. And whatever that smile meant to her, I felt the old wound pulse beneath it, familiar and newly awakened. The moment they crossed the threshold, the house shifted. Bernice walked in first, moving with the authority of someone conducting an inspection rather than entering another person's home. So this is it, she said, dragging a finger across the hallway table. Smaller than I imagined, and dusty. It is not dusty, I replied. She ignored me and stepped into the living room, peering at furniture, tapping surfaces like she expected hidden compartments. Mara, meanwhile, lifted her phone and slowly panned it across the space. For memories, she said when she noticed me looking. You have only been here 30 seconds. I answered. She laughed, a sound that never reached her eyes. I know, but I want to show Daniel where we are. He will be so relieved we made it here safely. Daniel, the husband who once told my daughter she needed to cut the cord. The man who told me, to my face, that a mother's influence had an expiration date. She moved on, already filming down the hallway. I turned toward the guest room, and for a moment, the years folded back on themselves. The last fight her 22, furious, slinging a backpack over her shoulder. You never support anything I want. I support you, I had said. I just do not support watching you disappear into someone else's life. She slammed the door so hard a picture frame cracked. I pushed the memory down and began opening drawers, shaking out the fresh sheets, placing towels at the end of the bed. I worked methodically, without sentiment. This was a room for visitors, not family returning home. Mara appeared in the doorway. Wow, still the same. You never change anything, Mom. I folded the last corner of the sheet. Some rooms are meant to stay temporary. Her smile faltered. Just briefly. Bernice's voice drifted down the hall. Where is the bigger bedroom? Surely there is one. I kept my tone even. This is the room you will use. I watched them both then. How Mara's shoulders tightened. How Bernice scoffed. I had let them inside, but nothing about it felt like welcoming them back. It started over dinner, barely an hour after they settled in. Mara pushed her plate away and folded her hands like she had rehearsed something. Mom, she began, I think we should talk about financial fairness. Bernice let out a satisfied hum, as if that was her cue. Yes, exactly. In a real family, everyone contributes and everyone benefits. Money should be merged, not hoarded. I kept my voice steady. Merged. Bernice leaned back. You have steady income now, a very comfortable amount, from what we saw in that article. And Mara has had a hard few years. It is only right you help her stabilize. Mara frowned slightly, but she did not deny it. We could pool resources, make things simpler. Their desperation slipped through the polite phrasing they weren't asking. They were cornering. I set my fork down. A fund. For all of us, Mara said quickly. You. Me, Bernice, and Daniel when he joins later. I blinked. Daniel intends to come here. Bernice scoffed. Of course he does. He deserves a fresh start too. Your home is big enough for a proper guest suite. There is only one guest room, I said. Mara hesitated. We were thinking, you could turn your office into a second one. You are retired now. You do not really need it, and you would need access to my accounts. Why exactly? Mara straightened. Just to make sure everything is transparent, so no one feels left out. Bernice nodded as if they were discussing weather patterns. It is how families operate when trust exists. I watched them. Mara's hopeful desperation. Bernice's practiced entitlement. Their words came like a script written long before they arrived. I lifted my glass, held it for a moment, then set it back down. I hear what you are asking, I said, and from the way Mara's shoulders loosened, she believed I was agreeing. I woke before dawn the next morning, the old habit of bakery hours still stitched into my bones. The house was quiet. Too quiet for two visitors who claimed exhaustion. I stepped into the hallway and noticed a sliver of light coming from my office. I never left that light on. When I pushed the door open, Bernice jerked upright from my desk, one hand hovering over an open drawer. What are you doing? I asked. She did not flinch. Looking for the printer. You keep things scattered. I am trying to help. By going through my papers, it is not a crime, she snapped. Families share information. Before I could answer, Mara appeared behind me, clutching a folder. Mom, good you are awake. We wanted to show you something. Bernice slipped past me and stood at her side like a bodyguard. Mara opened the folder with a rehearsed gentleness. This is a temporary support agreement. It just outlines expectations. Nothing demanding. I scanned the page. Monthly payments, access to accounts, authorization for family decision-making, all written in the kind of vague language designed to trap someone who was not paying attention. And you want me to sign this? I said, it protects all of us. Mara insisted, it avoids misunderstandings. You will not even feel the difference. You made more than $200,000 from the sale. $260,000, Bernice corrected. I looked up. How would you know that? Bernice shrugged. Public records are easy to find when you know where to look. Something in Mara's bag caught my eye. A torn corner of an old floral envelope. I reached for it before she could stop me. Inside were the letters I had written during the first years after she left birthday notes. Small updates, the kind of messages a mother sends into a void, hoping someone, somewhere, still listens. None of them were opened. Mara's face drained of color. Mom, I was going to... You kept them, I said quietly. But you never read a single one. She opened her mouth, but no words followed. I set the letters on my desk. The weight of them heavier than the paper they were printed on. Whatever softness had existed inside me shifted then not into anger. Just something clearer, sharper, something final. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time after they went back to the guest room. The folder, the letters, the agreement, they lay in front of me like a map of every year I had spent pretending the silence did not hurt. By mid-morning, I picked up the phone and called the number a friend had once given me. This is Attorney Kelman's office. A voice answered. My name is Harlow Vance, I said. I need to know what I am obligated to and what I am not. The woman paused. Tell me what happened. And I did, carefully, plainly. Her response was firm. You are not required to provide housing with You are not required to support adults. If anyone pressures you, document everything. It felt like a door had clicked open. Later, I stepped outside and saw my neighbor, Mrs. Patel, watering her potted mint. She looked up immediately. Your daughter is home for now, I said. She set the watering can down. Do not let loneliness make you forgive too quickly. Forgiveness is work. not surrender. Her words settled deeper than she knew. Inside, I opened the drawer where I kept my journals thick with entries from years when I believed I might break under the weight of being forgotten. I read page after page, seeing how I had changed, how I had rebuilt without her, how I had survived. I closed the last journal softly. I was no longer the woman who begged for her child's voice. I found them in the living room, hunched over the support agreement again. Bernice was whispering sharply, and Mara kept tracing the signature line with her thumb. "We need to talk," I said. Mara straightened immediately. Bernice didn't bother. "If this is about the office, we already explained no." I cut in. "This is about everything." I placed the stack of unopened letters on the table between us. Mara froze. "You went through my things." I said. "You brought paperwork asking me to hand over my accounts. And you kept 13 years worth of my letters without reading a single one." Mara's face twisted. "I was going to—" "Do not lie," I said quietly. Her breath hitched. Shame moved across her features. But pride fought to stay. Bernice leaned forward. "She owes you nothing. You left her alone to struggle. You think a few sentimental notes change that." Mara's voice cracked. "Bernice, stop." "No," I said. "Let her speak. She has been speaking for you for a long time." Bernice scoffed. "We are trying to build a family plan. You should be grateful she even came back." Mara swallowed hard. "Mom, I wanted a chance to fix things." "Fix things by taking from me?" I asked. She blinked fast, tears pushing through anger. "You do not understand how hard it has been. Daniel lost his job. Bernice's health. None of that gives you permission to violate my home." Bernice slapped her palm on the table. "You have more than enough. You are being selfish." For the first time in years, I did not shrink from her voice. "I am not your solution," I said, "and I am not a bank. I loved my daughter more than anything, but love does not require surrender." Mara's shoulders buckled, just slightly. I exhaled. Steady and final. This house is mine. My life is mine, and the taking stops today. Mara stood frozen after my last words, but Bernice recovered quickly. "So what now?" Bernice snapped. "You going to throw us out? After everything we told you?" "Yes," I said. "You will both be leaving tomorrow morning." Mara's breath caught. "Tomorrow, Mom. We just got here." "I know, but the moment you stepped into my office without permission, the visit ended." Bernice scoffed. "We uprooted our lives to come here. You came because you thought money waited for you." I replied, "Not love, not reconciliation." Mara stepped forward. "Please, just listen. We are overwhelmed. Daniel is drowning in debt. Bernice has medical bills. I did not know what else to do. I am offering resources." I said gently, "Not money. I have a list of housing programs, job leads, and legal aid clinics in the area. You can start there." Bernice sparked a laugh. "Resources. That is your grand gesture after winning millions. You hand us pamphlets. I am offering help that does not require me to sacrifice my boundaries." I said. Mara's voice cracked. "Mom, I cannot lose you again. You lost me 13 years ago," I said softly, "and you walked back in only when you thought there was something to gain." She pressed her palms to her face. Her sob was raw, nothing like the practiced guilt from earlier. I wanted a fresh start. I did not know how to ask. "You ask by telling the truth," I said. "Start now. Learn from this. Build a life that is yours." Bernice pushed past Mara, grabbing her suitcase. "We do not need this woman's pity. Come on." Mara didn't move. She looked at me, really looked, and her voice dropped to a whisper. "Mom, I am so sorry." I nodded, feeling the weight of both the past and the moment. "Tomorrow morning," I said. We will say goodbye then. The house was quiet the next morning after they left, so quiet I could finally hear my own thoughts again. I stood in the doorway a long moment, watching the two of them walk down the path. Bernice never glanced back. Mara did, just once. Then they were gone. I closed the door gently. By noon, I had already begun rearranging the guest room, folding the sheets, opening the windows, returning the space to neutrality. Not emptiness, just calm. My calm. I made coffee and sat at the same kitchen table where, days earlier, I had stared at broken trust. Now there was only the soft hum of appliances and the steady rhythm of my breath. I opened my notebook and began writing what the attorney had told me: structured plans, long-term investments, protections for myself, decisions made from clarity, not guilt. Every line I wrote felt like reclaiming another small piece of myself. In the afternoon, my phone buzzed once. A message from Mara. The shelter finally had a spot. I'm staying there for now. I am starting over. I am sorry. That is all for now. No requests, no hints, just a sentence that sounded like a person standing in the wreckage of her choices. Finally willing to lift something on her own, I typed back, "Take care of yourself, Mara," and nothing more. It was enough. Later, I stepped onto my porch, the same place where they had stood with suitcases and expectations. Now the boards were warm under my feet, and the air felt lighter. This house had survived years of silence, a storm of return, and finally, a truth that set every boundary in place. And now it was mine again, not to defend, but to live in. As I turned to go inside, gratitude rose quietly in my chest. For peace, for distance, for the strength I did not know I had until I needed it. If you've stayed with me through this story, like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe so more stories like this can reach you. Peace was quiet, but it wasn't empty. It was finally mine.